Black Doctors Podcast.
Hello, welcome back to the Black Doctors Podcast. I am Stephen, your host. Thank you for joining us every week. Every Monday, there's a new episode. We really appreciate you being here, listening, and supporting the show. This is the last episode of the month of June. It's been several solo episodes, which is kind of a new, kind of a first for me. I wouldn't call it imposter syndrome, but I'm typically a person of few words, and I feel like on social media and medicine and the conversations we have, a lot of times people just like to hear themselves talk, and they're just like talking in circles. And we have these conversations every day where there's like no new information being shared. And I think I compensate too far, and I typically assume that I don't have much to share that people are interested in listening to. So it's very helpful when I get feedback and people say they're listening to the show or a specific episode has helped them. That's also why I really enjoy having guests and having external opinions and voices share their thoughts, because then you get a variety of opinions. But this was it was good. I enjoyed the 4 weeks. Hopefully you did too. It was nice to be able to kind of put coherent thoughts together and plan some of the content for these episodes. So hopefully you enjoyed this month as we celebrated 4 years on the air. Definitely would have appreciated feedback as always. I'm going to share this message that I got on Instagram. This was 2 days ago. I'm wrapping up a week of nights in the ICU. I split my practice between anesthesia and critical care. So when I'm in the ICU, I do usually like 7 day shifts or 7 night shifts, 12-hour shifts. So as you can imagine, these weeks are pretty busy. Sleeping schedule is kind of messed up, but still kind of been able to keep up with the show editing and producing and recording this episode. Then I'm going to run into work and hopefully get it posted before I have to go to work. But I wanted to share this message I got that really made my weekend special from a guest that was on a previous episode. They texted me and said, "Wanted to tell you thanks. I had a patient tell me she watched my episode and it was a reason she wanted to see me. Her daughter did a ton of research and the podcast was one of the things she appreciated hearing about me." So little messages like that really, really brightened my day. It was a long, busy week. And one of my colleagues sent me that message and just made my day. I've had quite a few folks that come on the show and then they end up having patients that find them, because one of the benefits of podcasting, I didn't really mention this in the first episode, you can always look at the financial aspect of, I want marketing dollars, I want to be Joe Rogan, I want to make a lot of money off of this podcast side hustle. But the benefits of the show also are search engine optimization, because when your podcast episode is showing up on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, it's all out and indexed on the web. So as people start to Google you, these episodes will pop up. And I do make every effort to put the guest information in the show notes, so there's a direct link and people can look them up and find them through the show. So one of the things I try to offer for people that come on the show, because they're, have such incredible guests and they're giving up so much of their time and energy to support this effort. So definitely appreciate that. And thank you for those kind words. This episode of the Black Doctors Podcast is sponsored by TrueLearn. TrueLearn Smart Banks combine high-quality exam-style practice questions to help you prepare for that incredibly important test you're about to take. They have question banks designed for the USMLE exams, as well as for 9 different medical specialties. I used TrueLearn to prepare for American Board of Anesthesiology board exam. They also have question banks designed for allied health professionals, such as nurse practitioners and physician assistants. Check out the show notes for a special discount code that'll help you save money when you sign up for one of their question banks. Test your best with TrueLearn, the data-driven approach to exam preparation. I'm going to jump into today's episode, and I actually took some notes, something that I usually don't do. I usually like just go on the fly. And Dr. Nate Jones, he's really helpful with regards to, hey, man, you should probably be a little more organized. So I tried to take some of his advice and be more organized, even have a title for the episode before recording. Usually I record everything and I edit everything, and then I figure out what the title's going to be. But this week we're going to have some tips for decreasing burnout and finding happiness in medicine. I think, it's no surprise everybody's burnt out. You look at Twitter or X, and there's always different patient interactions that are just tedious and taxing. We know residency hours are obnoxious. We don't get paid well in residency. Also, shout out to everybody that is finishing residency as we're at the end of June. You know, I've really enjoyed seeing those posts of so many people that I knew throughout the years, some of the surgical people that I started residency with that are like just now finishing, wrapping up. Hats off to you guys I know it's a long road with the 5 to 7 years of training that you're going to go through. And I've just really enjoyed seeing so many people finish. I feel like I must be getting old because there's so many people that I've watched grow in residency. Dr. Obobi, she was my medical student back when I was at University of Chicago, and she stayed on, did her internal medicine residency, did her cardiac fellowship, and seeing her finish residency and fellowship has been incredible. I think Curly Hair MD, she was a pre-med, I think, when she was first posting on Twitter, and she just finished her residency. Michelle, there's so many incredible faces, and I guess that's the beauty of social media, that people have shared their journey with us, and now we get to participate and celebrate their successes. So that's been incredible. But I digress. The purpose of today's episode, I'm going to talk about how I have managed burnout and how I have found happiness in medicine. Overall, I'm very happy to be in the field, to be in this career. A lot of it came from how I ended up in the field. I took a leap of faith. That was the first episode, I think, or the second episode of this month. I took a leap of faith. I wasn't sure if I was smart enough to even make it into medicine. I worked hard, but there were a lot of doors that were open for me, a lot of connections, divine intervention that helped me get to where I am today. When I decided to go into medicine, there was two things that were driving me. One, it's going to be a challenge. Let's see if I can do this or not. Number two, it will be a steady job that I won't have to worry about finding employment ever. I'll be able to support a family. My thoughts going into medicine is like, hey, if I can make $200,000 a year, that'll be enough to live off of, to raise a family. And other than that, for me, money didn't matter. I think there's schools of thought that are like, you need to go into medicine purely because you want to help people. And I don't think that's fair, because there's no other, every other trade or profession, bankers don't go into their job to help people. And even as a banker, you can still help people. So I think, why you got into medicine can really help dictate and drive you forward, but you can also kind of revisit that from time to time. So that was my reason for going into medicine. Residency was hard. Medical school was hard, but, having worked construction and all these other menial jobs, it wasn't as bad as that. In residency, I got to work in air conditioning. That was cool. I actually got a pretty decent salary, even though it was, for 80-hour weeks. And for me, mostly it's gratitude that I was able to make it as far as I did. And then I attribute a lot to professionalism. There's people that say, medicine's a job of passion. I don't do medicine because it's my passion. Music is my passion. Medicine is far from my passion. Music, communication, those are my passions. And I actually had to sacrifice my passion of music when I took this career or started on this pathway to medicine. I went from being that music major as a freshman in college. I put down the instruments. I picked them up intermediately along the path, but I didn't have time to really focus on music the whole time I was pursuing this career in medicine. And it wasn't until the last 3 or 4 years I've been able to get back into my first passion, my first love, which is music. And I can always think like, oh, what could have been? I could have been like a big name, big time artist. Probably not, because like all of these fields are very cutthroat, and you have to work hard to be the best and be the people that you see on Spotify and on the news and all that. But I can think, maybe I could have been a great musician, but now I kind of have the best of both worlds. I'm like an average novice musician, but I have the time now to jump into that passion, and I have a career that I enjoy. My practice in medicine is driven from professionalism. Being a physician, to me, I took that oath, but more importantly, it was like not the Hippocratic oath, but the social contract with the patients that I would see, that I will be professional. I will continue to learn, to do my best, to show up 100% to the best of my ability when I'm engaged in patient care. And for me, I do my job out of professionalism. I feel that if I were to go based on passion, passions fade. You'll have a passion for medicine and all of a sudden you're burnt out. And what happens to the patients when your passion fades away? So personally, I'm driven from professionalism because I think you should always be professional. So the point of this episode, the first thing I would start with when you're looking at burnout or finding happiness is to know your why. I just shared my why. I've accomplished everything that I wanted. I have the $200,000 salary. I have the stable job. I was able to kind of prove to myself that I could get to where I am. So I've kind of accomplished all the goals that I set out to accomplish in this career. I don't want you to get it twisted. I'm not, for people that say like, don't go into medicine for the money. Yes and no. Depending on, if you have a fixed salary in mind, that's one thing. If you say you want to go into medicine to be rich, you may be disappointed. You can become rich in medicine. But, that number that signifies being rich is going to continuously shift. When I was in college, I thought $200,000 a year was rich. $200,000 a year is nothing to sneeze at or shake your head at, but it's not considered rich in most circles today. So setting measurable goals, especially as you're saying, this is my why, you need measurable, attainable, smart goals that you can actually accomplish and say you've done it, you got to where you want it to be. And now you can enjoy the fruits of your labor. So if you set out in medicine to be rich, you have to define for yourself what is rich. Is it the 5-bedroom house? Is it an acre? Is it multiple cars? Is it Ferraris and Lamborghinis? Because that's going to dictate kind of where and when you're going to meet your goal. And that may adversely affect your happiness. So knowing your why, whether it's to help people, that's admirable, that's great. Whether it's to be financially stable and secure, whether it's to have the accolades, you got to kind of dig into that. If you're in medicine for the title or for the prestige, because you can attain those things, but once you get the title and the prestige, you may find out that that's not what you thought it would be, and then be dissatisfied with your career choice. Realize that your why can change over time. Just because you started on the path, I want to help people so bad. Well, now your why for why you're continuing to get up and go to work is probably going to change or become a little more complicated. Maybe you're married, you're in a relationship, you have kids, you have a car note, you have a house. You got to pay bills. You got to pay back those student loans. Your why for going to medicine, maybe you got your dream job at your dream hospital and you love going to work every day. That's fantastic. That could be your new why. And that's going to change how you move forward because now you're kind of pivoting everything and gearing towards growth at that institution that you love so dearly. So your why can definitely change. There's good things about this job of medicine. There's bad things. Just like the risk benefits conversation we have with patients, the good should be outweighing the bad. If you're not having a great time in medicine, sit down and look at what is going on. Do you not like your specialty? Do you not like your practice environment or your practice model? Do you not like your salary or your reimbursements? Do you not like your geographic location? Do you not like your boss? What specifically is wrong with your job? And realize that medicine is different everywhere. Maybe you've only practiced in academic medicine. Maybe you want to try private practice, or maybe private practice isn't doing it for you, even though you're making that incredible private practice salary. Maybe you miss working in underserved communities. Maybe you miss teaching residents and medical students. Maybe you miss that academic environment, and that is worth that pay cut that you may take to work in that environment once again. You got to start looking at things as, your job satisfaction overall. And so there's a lot more to job satisfaction than just salary. You have to be careful or beware of a sunken cost fallacy, that because you've invested so much time and effort into something, you have to keep going. Now, I do find it concerning for the folks that are in the middle of medical training and then they drop out or say, this isn't for me. And I would love to remind those people, like, remember, I know I just said sunken cost fallacy, but remember how hard you worked to get to where you are today, back when the only thing you wanted to do was to get into medical school and pass that MCAT. And now you did, and now you're in residency. And yes, residency is hard. Maybe your program is incredibly malignant. Maybe they're racist. Figure out exactly what can be done before you leave that program, because, finishing residency is such a milestone that can significantly impact your future earnings. And you can always finish residency and work part-time and make a very competitive salary and then do whatever you want to do. So try to hang in there. If you're thinking about quitting residency, quitting medical school, like, definitely get counsel from a lot of people. And as I'm sure most people do, don't take that decision lightly. My key to happiness in medicine, my key to avoiding burnout, I first read this book called Essentialism. I actually have a copy here. It's a New York Times bestseller. It's entitled Essentialism. And it was kind of the precursor to me for finding the concept of minimalism. But very early on in this book, entitled Essentialism, it says in a quote, "If you don't prioritize your life, someone else will." This book really changed my perspective on saying no. One of the concepts this book brings forward is that, we're so worried about saying no. Our boss wants us to do X, Y, and Z. If we say no, they're going to think we're not a team player, and this, that, and the third. The book raises the point that perhaps as you say no, but you occasionally say yes to the things that you are truly interested in, the people you work with realize, understand, and appreciate the fact that when Steve Bradley says yes to something, he actually works hard and gets it done, as opposed to, Steven has 3 or 4 different positions. He says yes, but, he performs, it's mediocre performance. So they said, try it. And over time, this random book that I read off of Amazon, they were like, over time, people will start to appreciate the fact that you do say no and respect you more. I was like, I don't know about that, but let's give it a try. I don't know if people actually respect me more. I just know that I have gotten really good at saying no to stuff that I don't want to do. And I am able to recoup so much time in my life because I say no. And I'm talking about, things like in residency and medical school, you have all these extracurricular activities. And as you're trying to get into medical school, right, you have to do extracurriculars because the admissions process is so difficult. In residency, you have to write that paper, do that project because you want to match to that residency program. In residency, depending on your goal for fellowship or where you want to work, there's some wickets that you might have to hit. But you need to start thinking critically about, will this extra project really get me to the goal that I want to accomplish? Being a chief resident for a year, in an unpaid position, or, some specialties have that extra year where you're kind of getting paid as a hybrid / resident / attending, and there's admin responsibilities. And you really have to sit down and think to yourself, financially, does this make sense? Does this really make that much of an impact in my ability to match to fellowship? We need to sit down and really think about how we rank these residency training programs and these fellowship training programs. We have very elite institutions, and to a degree, sure, you can definitely set your career up depending on where you train, but do you want to work Ivy League, or are you okay with working in a community hospital? And most fellowships and residency programs are going to train you very well for working in any hospital. If you're at one of the top academic centers, they're going to see some crazy stuff, and, training at these Ivy League programs can open up that career for you. And that's important to note. But is that what you truly want, or do you want to go back to somewhere else and quote unquote just provide bread and butter care? And I say that to say, so then maybe you don't need to stick around for that extra year as a chief resident. One of the reasons, or one of the things that's difficult to watch, is in the general surgery world, this concept that you need to take an extra 2 years of research during your training. And, the elite academic institutions, most of those surgery programs, you're doing the 7 years. There's like social pressures or whatever that if you just do the 5 and out, like maybe you're less committed. I'm not a surgeon, but if you're in surgery, correct me if I'm wrong. And I always thought it was interesting because the institution that I trained at, the surgery residents I work with would do the 7-year program. They'd do 2 years, and they'd say things like, "Oh, it's great. I get to take a break in the middle." But when you realize that 2 years, you're missing out on $400,000, $500,000. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of opportunity costs, and just being done with your training. And it was the irony that we would get residents that would match into our cardiac fellowship that would do their 5-year surgery program. We had a lot of residents that were coming out of a school in New York, but they would do 5 years of surgery. They come out as general surgeons and then come and do their 2 years or 3 years, whatever, of CT surgery fellowship. Meanwhile, the folks at our institution were doing 7 years and then matching it, and there's different tiers of cardiac surgical programs. And I get that, but you really need to sit down and think about, are these sacrifices worth it based upon what I want to do? So that's essentialism. Learn to say no. That kind of went on a little tangent, but this ties right into minimalism as well. And I watched the documentary on Netflix. I listened to the podcast. The podcast, they kind of talk about a lot of topics. They keep saying the same thing over and over again, which is a pet peeve of mine, and I'm not into as much. But the documentary on Netflix is called Minimalism. I can't recall, but if I think of the title, I'll put it in the show notes. And that changed my perspective on what I want and what I enjoy out of life. Through that series, it said, really sit down and think about, what do you like? When I was a kid, I wanted a Dodge Viper. I wanted a Hummer. I wanted the big house, all those things that I saw, designer clothes. But in residency, after reading this and watching this documentary, I was like, do I really enjoy fast cars? Do I enjoy sports cars? Do I enjoy sports? Do I enjoy fashion? What gives me pleasure out of life? I like to see nice things. I like to make music. I like to create. So the two things that I've maintained are art. I like to collect art on a very small scale. I like to go to art galleries and museums and nature and just enjoy and absorb so much from the world around me. And that's number one. Number two, I enjoy music. So I have a plethora of musical instruments, because my goal or my dream as a kid was to be able to walk into a room, basically have a home studio, and I have an idea that I want to create, and I can just sit down and do it. And so I am so blessed to be able to have those two things. And even from the art perspective, I only have so many walls in my house. I have about 35 pieces of art that I've collected, most of it cheap from, independent artists at their little artist nights. And it's cool. And I can remember when I travel, my wife and I will pick up a piece of art and bring it back. And a lot of it, they're like $40, $50 pieces, right? I'm not talking about Otto and Tanya Wright and their museum, the Wright art collection. Incredible. They actually sent me a brochure from their last art show, and hopefully I will get to go see their house one day. They're in Philadelphia, I believe, and just have the most incredible art collection. We need to support Black artists. I digress. So for me, those are the two things that I chose to focus on. I don't enjoy sports, so I do not follow sports. If I'm at a sports bar, I'll watch a game that's on. I'll go to a hockey game or whatever. But I literally just found out a couple of days ago that the NBA playoffs was done. I think Boston won, probably. And I just don't follow it because it gives me no pleasure. Cars, shoes, fashion, no pleasure. I have a bit of a capsule wardrobe. I wear the same chinos to work every day. I like 5 different colors. Then I wear white shirt, blue shirts, and a blue stripe shirt. Monday I wear blue stripe. Tuesdays white or blue. Wednesday I wear pink. Thursday, Friday it's white shirts or blue shirts. So I've intentionally kind of minimalized that portion of my life. And that in turn has given me back so much time. I don't have to do all of the things. I have extra time to sit on the couch with my wife and watch Netflix. If I want to work on some projects, I have time for those projects as well. But the minimalism has really given me this added time. be mindful of how much your hobbies and pastimes cost, because then you have to work more, right? If I was into fast cars and I wanted a Porsche or Lamborghini or Ferrari, like I've got to work significantly more. It's going to delay retirement. That could change my overall job satisfaction, happiness, and could bring a greater propensity for burnout. So with minimalism, I choose to prioritize what is important to me, and that goes for both work and at home. At work, think critically about the positions that you accept. I already talked about being a chief resident. I see a lot of residency programs popping up, these social media positions. Do not do that for free. If your residency program has social media and they want you to post and advertise for their program, that's great. Financially, there should be some incentive, or you should get on a product or paper. What is in it for you? Don't work for free. We get so conditioned. And again, if you're in medicine for the passion, to me, that's a lot of free work, free labor. Don't do this stuff for free. Once you finish your residency, like you have no or little ties or responsibility to that program. But if you did their social media for 2 years, like you built no equity in that system. There's different, as you're starting your new jobs, there's different departmental positions. We're so conditioned to getting involved, to rolling our sleeves up and helping, that people know that. You start your job, we'll give the new grad X, Y, and Z position. People are just waiting to leave these jobs and give them to you. So I encourage everybody, my advice, as you're starting your new job, spend the first 6 months saying, you don't say no, but say, hey, we want you to do X, Y, and Z. Your answer, I recommend saying, is, that sounds like a good opportunity. I'm just adjusting to the new city and I have my boards coming up. Can we table this for now? But I'd love to talk about this later on in the year. And if they're bringing this to you in August, September, October, right, it's easy to push that to January of the next year. Ideally, by then, you may have taken your boards, or maybe you have a better grasp on the workflow and workload at your new practice. You can have a better idea of what actually matters in your hospital system or for academic promotion. Because one of the big secrets is a lot of these jobs just need to be done, but they may not really count towards your academic promotion. Find out exactly what is usually in a policy. What are the requirements to promote? Academic centers, it's research, and then there's some other stuff, citizenship, that you need to do. But some positions are busier than others, and they don't all contribute in the same way. Look out for minority tax. You want to be the DEI person just because fit the description. If you're, and I caveat this by saying, if you're very passionate about any of these things, about diversity, equity, inclusion, to the point that you are comfortable taking on the additional workload, by all means do it. Maybe you're interested in leadership. So sure, maybe become the scheduler. Just realize it's a big deal from becoming the person that's on the schedule to become the scheduler. There's some perks, but now when shifts are short and people are needed, your phone's gonna be ringing. And I very much enjoy the fact that I leave my work at work and I step out of the hospital and I have nothing. I do nothing that I don't want to do for my job on my own time. And I've been able to carve that out by, one, saying no and being very intentional about the position that I accept. Because when you accept some of these positions, you are providing time, effort, services outside of your normal clinical hours. So you should know this. If we want to be department chairs are getting called and pinged at all hours of the night whenever anything goes bad. It's not all daisies and roses, right? I kind of mentioned this earlier, but you need to know what are your hobbies, your goals, your priorities in life. This dictates how much you need to work. Do you want to be a department chair? Do you want to be CEO of a hospital system? Well, you're going to have to take on these leadership responsibilities. You're going to have to do all these extra things. Do you want to be a residency program director? Then you're going to have to get involved in graduate medical education, so on and so forth. So the thought I want you to take away is that you need to be intentional about the jobs that you decide to do. Decide how many things you're going to have on your plate at any given time, and think about how long is this commitment. Are you engaged in something that is going to have a monthly meeting for a 4-year period? Like, that's ridiculous. Be very careful about jumping into something with that big, significant commitment. think about how translatable this metric is. If you leave this institution and go to a different academic institution, is that going to translate? Maybe you were the quality and safety person at your hospital and you put together M&Ms once a month faithfully. Maybe your new program, though, there's a clinician who has built their entire career on QI. And now you move there and it's like, okay, all of your expertise, you're going to struggle to really put it to work. And it's something that you would evaluate as you're looking and negotiating that job contract. You want to be able to take the things you've learned and continue building on that with each institution. The things that are pretty much always translatable in medicine and academics specifically is research. So instead of, going full tilt with diversity, equity, and inclusion or scheduling or pharmacy and therapies committee, are you still getting the time to produce papers and do your research? Because that's what's going to matter when you go to a different institution. It's okay to say no. As an anesthesiologist, when I rarely cancel a case, it's rare that I regret canceling that case. It's much better to say no, and then I can go on with my life than saying, hey, this is a little sketchy, but I think we can get it done. And then, sphincters are tight for the entire case, and the surgeon's like, hey, I'll knock this thing out in 30 minutes. And then you're like 2 hours later and you're pushing pressure and it's just crazy. So don't regret saying no. I'll leave end on this note, physician, heal thyself. We have so much training. It's up to us to recognize these symptoms of burnout or depression. I was going to, pull up some stuff and go through symptoms, but you can Google that. What classifies as burnout? You'll be surprised. And if you're in residency, you for sure have symptoms of burnout. And I would wager a lot of money that you also have symptoms of depression. I, looking back, realized that, I had both of these during residency. And for me, it came to a head. I've shared this story before, but I think I was in my third year of residency and I was on labor and delivery at one of the hospitals I worked at. And one of my colleagues from Howard called me. She was a OB/GYN resident, and she called me out of the blue and was like, hey, this person, they're gone. I was like, what do you mean? And that was kind of like, it was a very brief conversation. They were in a residency program with another person that had trained at Howard, and this resident who we all knew just didn't come to work that day. They didn't wake up. And it's like, wow, just like that, everything that person had worked for, their family, I'm sure, was so proud of them. They sacrificed so much. We've sacrificed so much to get through residency, to get through medical school, to be there serving the community, doing all the right things. And just like that life was over in an instant. It was about 2 months later at my residency program, one of the residents in a different specialty, he was Black. We all hung out together. We were all good friends, and he also did not wake up. Don't know the details, what all happened. Just one day he was here, and then he wasn't. And just like that, gone. Such a promising life, a successful career ahead of these individuals. And I realized it hit me at that moment, I was like, what am I working so hard for? This delayed satisfaction, delayed gratification. I have to enjoy every moment of life that I can. Am I going to enjoy every 24, 32-hour call? Probably not. It's going to suck. Am I going to enjoy every intern exam? No. These step exams, these board exams, they're going to be, into each life, a little rain must fall. But in the meantime, I will not refuse to allow myself to enjoy this journey, this path I'm on, this life. I honestly checked out of residency for about a month to 2 months. I would still go to work. I would still perform clinically. My attendings didn't really, to my knowledge, realize a difference. But there's pictures online. This was when I remodeled my kitchen. I bought a condo in residency, and I remodeled my entire kitchen. I saw some stuff online, so I figured out how to pour concrete countertops. So I would bring home sheets of wood from Home Depot, and I cut them into forms for countertops. And I bought 30 bags of concrete and mixed these countertops and sanded them in my living room. And I chipped up my entire tile floor. That alone took about 3 weeks because I could only work on it after I got off work, but not too late because I was banging around and my neighbors were there. But it took me, I started in October. I don't think I really finished the job until January. But for a solid 2 months, and I was checked out. I didn't read. Thankfully, I worked hard enough and I built a good foundation clinically that I didn't suffer. I don't think it was too obvious. But I realized that I needed to step away and I needed to check out for my own mental health and clarity. And realizing how fragile life is, we see it all day, every day, and the patients that we're taking care of, we have to value and treasure life, the life that we have. So I encourage you all to really look introspectively. Nobody else is going to do this for us. If I had to read this quote one more time, if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. So that's what I'll end on. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Black Doctors Podcast. I really want us all to be the best that we can be clinically, professionally, in real life, outside of the hospital. We really have to protect our own mental health. The healthcare system's not going to do it. And we need to be able to show up and be our best selves for our patients, for our colleagues as well. Thanks for tuning in to the Black Doctors Podcast. We're here every Monday with a new episode. Shout out to TrueLearn for the sponsorship. So every month you'll hear at least one ad from them. They're a test bank that I used myself when I was preparing for my in-training exams. They have materials for anesthesia, general surgery, a bunch of other specialties. Fantastic question bank. They also have resources for allied health professionals, nurse practitioners, physician assistants. If you visit the show notes, you will find a discount code that you can use when you purchase one of their products. They're one of our very first sponsors. I think they're the CEO of the company is an anesthesiologist, so we appreciate them supporting us. If you want your name in the show, let us know. Reach out. We have some sponsorships available, or you can always refer people to us as well. Next week, we're going to jump back into, we'll have some guests. You won't have to deal with just me every episode. Excited to sit down and chat with Dr. Linda Lang. She is an anesthesiology resident, but an incredible person. She was actually a physical therapist for several years and worked as a physical therapist before returning to medical school. So she has an incredibly inspiring story, and we'll start listening to that next week. If you haven't already, give us a follow on social media at the Black Doctors Podcast, at Stephen Bradley, MD. You'll see my music there. I'm really on this wellness kick, I guess, to kind of dovetails nicely with this episode. Over the last several months, I've really explored the sound healing space and mindfulness and music therapy, and created quite a few videos with handpan, and then singing bowls are coming, and eventually we'll be uploading everything to the ambient.rx YouTube account. You can go there. You can find some sound healing, some mental wellness, just to chill out and have some peace and maybe some meditation. So appreciate you rocking with me here every week. I am the host and creator of the show. I do all the editing, the music, that's me. And I really appreciate you showing up, listening, downloading, leaving comments, sharing with people you may know. The last thing I'll add is, before the end of the month, I'll release another podcast episode, because once a month, I'm going to start doing a Black Doctors community podcast episode with information that is targeted to the community, to the patients that we serve. Basic health literacy information, not medical advice, but medical information that can hopefully start to move the needle and just provide general information for people that can improve the quality of health that they receive. So stay tuned for that as well. Thanks for tuning in to the Black Doctors Podcast, here every week because representation matters.